If you think this is one of those made-up internet stories, I wish it was. My name is Daniel Mercer, and when I was 13, we moved into House 14 on Blackwood Lane. Nothing in that house was right. But the phone calls were the first thing that told us we should have left. When the police came to our house for the third time, my father was too angry to let them in. "We do not have a landline," he told the officer. "We never installed one. There is no phone in this house." The officer looked past him, straight into our hallway, and said, "Sir, dispatch just received another 911 call from inside your home, 32 seconds ago." Then he lowered his voice, and this time the caller said your daughter was already inside the walls. Blackwood Lane sat on the edge of a small town in Indiana, the kind of place where every lawn was trimmed, every flagpole had a flag, and every neighbor watched from behind their curtains like they were waiting for something to happen. House 14 was the cheapest place in the neighborhood. That should have been enough. My father, Aaron Mercer, called it luck. My mother, Elise, called it a fresh start. I called it ugly. It looked wrong even in daylight. The house was taller than the others, too narrow in some places and too wide in others, like it had been built from memory by someone who had only heard what a house was supposed to look like. The windows on the second floor did not line up with the windows below them. The front porch tilted just enough to make you feel off balance. And the paint, what was left of it, peeled in long strips that looked like old skin. There were 4 of us moving in: my dad, my mom, my little sister Hannah, who was 8, and me. The realtor was a woman named Lisa Hargrove. She smiled too much and never answered a question directly. Dad asked why the house had been empty for so long. "Bad timing," she said. Mom asked if there had been water damage in the basement. "Nothing serious," Lisa said. I asked why there were scratches on the inside of the basement door. Lisa looked at me for a second too long before smiling again. "Kids do weird things," she said. The first neighbor we met was Mrs. Delaney from House 12. She was old, bony, and always wore gardening gloves, even when she was not gardening. She brought over a peach pie the evening we moved in. "Welcome to Blackwood Lane," she said. Then she leaned closer to my mother and added, "If you hear knocking, do not answer it from the inside." My mother laughed because she thought it was a joke. Mrs. Delaney did not laugh back. That first night, I could not sleep, not because of the new room, not because of the unfamiliar sounds. I was used to houses settling, pipes rattling, wood creaking. This was different. At 3:13 in the morning, something knocked 3 times from inside my bedroom wall. Not loud, not aggressive, just 3 slow, deliberate knocks. I sat up in bed and held my breath. A few seconds later, I heard it again. 3 knocks. Then silence. The next morning, I told Dad. He said it was probably old pipes. We did not have pipes in that wall. The first police visit happened 4 days after we moved in. It was a Sunday afternoon. My dad was assembling a cheap metal shelf in the garage when a patrol car rolled up the driveway. An officer stepped out, a tall guy with a red face and tired eyes. His badge said, M. Carver. "Afternoon," he said. "We received a 911 call from this address." Dad blinked at him. "That is impossible." Open line, a child crying, then static. My mother came out onto the porch with Hannah behind her. "No one called 911, she said. Officer Carver glanced down at his notepad. "Dispatch placed the call at 2:11 p.m. It pinged to this property." "We do not even have a home phone," Dad said. Carver looked at the house, then back at us. "Mind if I take a quick look around?" My father hated cops in that particular way some men do when they think being questioned is a personal insult. But my mother told him to stop acting difficult and let the man inside. So Officer Carver walked through the house, room by room. When he reached the basement door, Hannah suddenly grabbed my mother's hand hard enough to make her wince. "What is wrong?" Mom asked. "I heard somebody breathing," Hannah whispered. Dad rolled his eyes. "Enough." Carver opened the basement door. The smell hit all of us at once. Wet wood, rust, mold, and something sweet underneath it. Not pleasant sweet, rotting sweet. The basement was unfinished, concrete floor, exposed beams, 2 tiny windows near the ceiling, an old washer and dryer left behind by the previous owners. Carver went down first. Dad followed him. I stayed at the top of the stairs and listened. At first, there was nothing. Then Carver's voice. "Sir, what is this?" Dad answered from below. "Probably old electrical." There was a pause. "No," Carver said. "I mean this." When they came back upstairs, Carver had dust on his knees and a strange expression on his face. "What happened?" Mom asked. He looked at Hannah. "Maybe let the kids wait outside." Dad's jaw tightened. "Whatever you have to say it." Carver hesitated, then said, "There is an old phone jack mounted behind the washer and fresh marks on the concrete, like something heavy was dragged recently." Dad laughed in disbelief. "A phone jack in an old house? That is what this is about?" Carver ignored him. "Has anyone here moved the washer?" We had not. He told us to call if anything else strange happened and left after 10 minutes. That night, my father disconnected the power to the basement lights because he was convinced the old wiring was causing everyone to act stupid. At 3:13 a.m., I woke up again. This time, the knocking came from under my bed. 3 slow knocks. Then, a girl's voice whispered through the dark, "Do not let her hear you awake." I did not move until morning. Children in horror stories always do the same thing. They draw strange pictures. They talk to invisible people. They say terrifying things like they are describing the weather. My sister Hannah did all of that by the end of our second week in House 14. At breakfast one morning, she said, "The girl downstairs does not like when Daddy gets angry." Mom looked up from her coffee. "What girl?" "The one in the walls." Dad slammed his fork down. "Enough, right now." Hannah flinched so hard she almost cried. Mom shot Dad a look and turned back to Hannah gently. "Honey, did you have a dream?" Hannah shook her head. "She told me not to say her name out loud." "Why?" I asked. Hannah looked at me with complete seriousness. "Because then the house knows you can hear her." No one said much after that. Later that day, I found Hannah sitting on the floor in the upstairs hallway with a box of crayons. She was drawing our house, but not the way it looked. She drew the rooms we knew, the kitchen, the living room, the stairs. Then she drew rooms inside the walls, small, narrow spaces between the real rooms connected by tiny square doors. Stick figures stood inside them. Some of them were missing faces. One was colored completely black. At the bottom of the page, in shaky red letters, she had written, "She stays where the hallway bends." Our hallway did not bend. That evening, the second 911 call came in. This time, the police arrived with 2 officers, Carver and a woman named Deputy Sloan. Sloan did most of the talking. Dispatch says the caller whispered, "She took my mother into the crawl space." Then the line disconnected. Dad was furious now. He demanded records, proof, audio, anything. Sloan simply asked again if they could search the house. This time, they spent longer in the basement. I followed, pretending to be curious instead of terrified. Deputy Sloan ran her flashlight along the far wall and stopped near the old washer. "There," she said. I saw it too then. A seam in the concrete block wall, thin as a pencil line. At first, I thought it was a crack. Then she crouched and brushed dust aside, revealing the outline of a narrow metal door painted the same gray as the wall. Dad swore under his breath. "No one mentioned this," Mom said. Carver grabbed the handle and pulled. It did not move. Sloan looked at the floor. "Something has been in and out recently." There were marks in the dust. Not footprints, finger trails, like someone had crawled out using only their hands. They told us to stay upstairs while they forced the door open. I remember standing in the kitchen with my mother and Hannah, listening to metal groan in the basement below us. Then, after a loud snap, the silence changed. You know how silence can feel different when someone finds something bad? That kind. When Carver came upstairs, his face was gray. "What is it?" Mom asked. He looked at my father first, then at me, then at Hannah. "There is a crawl space behind the basement wall," he said. "It runs under part of the house." "And?" Dad snapped. Carver swallowed. "There is a mattress down there." They would not let us see it. Not that night. Not after they called in more units. Not after Deputy Sloan asked my mother whether anything had gone missing since we moved in. Not after they found food wrappers, empty water bottles, and a child's hair ribbon in the crawl space behind the wall. Dad kept saying the same thing over and over. That stuff could have been there for years. Maybe it could have. But the water bottles were not dusty. And one of the food wrappers was from a gas station 2 blocks away, with an expiration date from that same month. Someone had been there recently, watching us from inside the house. The police searched the crawl space until dawn and found nothing living. What they did find was worse in a different way. Scratched into the wooden beams in dozens of places were the same words: "Do not fall asleep when the house is hungry." They asked us to stay in a motel for a few nights. Dad refused. He said they were overreacting, that some homeless person must have gotten in years ago, that the whole neighborhood was making us paranoid because they did not want new people on the lane. Mom wanted to leave immediately, but Dad had spent most of our savings on the house, so we stayed. That was the week things started moving. Nothing dramatic at first. Kitchen cabinets left open. A chair turned toward the hallway when no one remembered moving it. The basement door unlatched in the middle of the night. Hannah said the girl had started humming. Every time she said that, the temperature in the room felt colder. I stopped sleeping properly. I would lie awake waiting for 3:13, and usually, right on time, the knocks would come. Sometimes from the wall, sometimes from the floor, once from inside my closet. 3 knocks, always 3. Then a whisper too faint to understand. I started recording at night on an old camcorder my uncle had given me. The first few nights caught nothing. Then, on the 6th night, I found something. The video showed me asleep in bed, blankets pulled up to my chin. At 3:13, a soft knocking came from the wall behind my head. 3 knocks. The closet door slowly opened by itself, and something pale, too pale, leaned halfway out from the darkness. It was not a face, not fully. It looked like skin stretched over a shape that did not have the right bones underneath. No eyes, no mouth, just a smooth, white suggestion of a human head. It remained there for 11 seconds, tilted slightly, like it was listening to me breathe. Then it withdrew. The closet door closed. I watched that tape 6 times before I showed anyone. When I brought it to my mother, she went cold and silent. When she showed my father, he accused me of faking it. We were in the middle of screaming at each other when Hannah, standing in the doorway, said, "That is not the girl." We all turned to her. She looked terrified. That is the thing that wears her. The third 911 call was the one that changed everything. It came on a Thursday night during a thunderstorm. The power had gone out twice already. Rain pounded the windows so hard it sounded like handfuls of gravel. Mom was packing a bag, quietly, secretly. I think she had finally decided to take us and leave, with or without Dad. He was downstairs in the basement with a flashlight because he had heard the washer turn on by itself. Then the lights cut out again. We heard him shout, not in pain, in surprise. Then silence. A minute later, headlights swept across the front windows. Police. Again. Officer Carver was the first to the porch. He was soaked through, breathing hard like he had run from the car. "Where's your husband?" he asked my mother. "In the basement," she said. "Why?" Carver stepped inside without waiting. Deputy Sloan came right after him. The 911 caller said he opened the wrong door. Mom's face drained of color. We all went to the basement together. The stairs were wet, not from rain, from muddy footprints, small ones, bare feet. At the bottom of the basement stairs, Dad's flashlight lay on the floor, still on, pointed at the broken open crawlspace door behind the washer. The beam shook because my mother was shaking when she picked it up. "Aaron?" she called. No answer. Carver drew his weapon and told everyone to stay back. He and Sloan went into the crawlspace first. I wish I had listened when my mother told me not to follow. The space behind the wall was bigger than it should have been. That is what I remember most. From the outside, it should have been a narrow channel between foundation sections. Inside, it opened into a maze of cramped tunnels reinforced with old wood and rusting metal beams. There were places where the house's original structure seemed to stop making sense, as if additions had been built inside it without changing the outside shape. The farther you looked, the more wrong the geometry became. Flashlight beams caught old toys, stained blankets, mason jars full of cloudy water, and on the dirt floor, fresh drag marks, leading deeper. "Aaron!" Mom screamed now. Still nothing. Then, from somewhere ahead of us, my father's voice answered. "I am here." Mom tried to rush forward, but Sloan stopped her. "Wait." Dad's voice came again, closer this time. "Do not move. Do not come in here." Carver shouted, "Aaron, come toward my voice." No response for several seconds. Then my father said something that made every hair on my arms stand up. "That is not my voice." Immediately after, from somewhere to our right, we heard him scream. A real scream this time. Short, choked off. Mom broke free and ran into the dark. We all followed. I do not know how long we crawled through that space. It could have been 40 seconds. It felt like an hour. Then the tunnel opened into a low chamber directly beneath our living room. In the center of it sat an old rotary phone on a wooden crate. Its cord disappeared into the dirt. It was ringing, loud, shrill, impossible. My father was nowhere in sight. Mom stared at the phone like it was a snake. Then it stopped ringing. A second later, Officer Carver's radio crackled. "Dispatch. Unit 12, we just got another 911 call from Blackwood Lane. Open line. Female caller. She says, do not let the child answer the phone." We all looked at Hannah. She was standing at the edge of the chamber, pale as paper, staring upward at the underside of the floorboards. "No," she whispered. Then a hand burst through the dirt behind the crate. Mom screamed. Carver spun and aimed, but it was only a hand, severed at the wrist. My father's wedding ring still on the finger. After that, everything happened fast. Police evacuated the house and finally treated it like a real crime scene. Crime scene tape, floodlights, search teams, canine units, reporters by morning. They never found the rest of my father. Officially, he was listed as missing for 8 months before being declared dead. Unofficially, everyone in town believed Blackwood Lane had finally taken another one. That was the first time we heard that phrase, taken another one. Because once the police dug into the history of House 14, they found things the realtor never disclosed. The house had not just been empty. It had been sold and resold under different ownership structures 4 times in 20 years. Families moved in. Families left suddenly. Sometimes they left belongings behind. Sometimes they left blood. One previous resident, a single mother named Janet Vale, had called the police 9 times in 11 days to report sounds in the walls, missing food, and a girl speaking through the vents. She disappeared with her 6-year-old son. The case went cold. Another family reported waking up to find every interior door in the house open at exactly 3:13 a.m. for 3 nights in a row. They moved out a week later. A retired contractor who bought the property to renovate it died in the basement after what was ruled an accidental fall. His notebook was recovered from the scene. Inside it, he had drawn impossible floor plans that did not match the external dimensions of the house. Beside one sketch, he had written, "The spaces change when no one is looking." The oldest record went back to 1974. A fire, not enough to destroy the house, but enough to kill the family living there. A mother, 2 daughters. The father survived. He told police that before the fire started, his younger daughter had woken him crying because the woman under the house was singing again. He later recanted and claimed grief had made him confused. 3 days after the funeral, he hanged himself in the garage. There was one thing all the cases shared. Every single family reported calls to or from 911 with no known source, and every report mentioned a child's voice. The police eventually brought in structural engineers to map the hidden spaces under and inside the house. What they found made no sense. There were crawl spaces that did not appear on old building plans, narrow passages between walls with signs of long-term habitation, tiny observation holes looking into bedrooms, hallways, even the upstairs bathroom. One chamber had dolls made from bundled animal hair and children's clothing, and beneath the oldest section of foundation, sealed behind rotted boards and brick, they found a room. A real room. No windows, no electrical, dirt floor. On the far wall, written in layers over layers with charcoal, paint, blood, and something darker, was the same name repeated hundreds of times. Marrow. No police record ever explained what that meant, but Hannah did. She said it was not a name. It is what she is, my sister whispered when Sloan came to speak to us at the motel. What does that mean? Sloan asked. Hannah hugged her knees to her chest and stared at the TV, which was not on. She gets inside when people grieve, Hannah said softly, or when they are angry, or lonely, or scared for too long. Then the house makes room for her. Neither of us slept that night. At 3:13 a.m., the motel room phone rang. My mother answered before anyone could stop her. Hello? At first, there was only static. Then, a little girl crying. My mother went rigid. Who is this? The crying stopped. A calm voice came through the receiver. A young girl's voice. Thin, weak, almost polite. Please, do not let her wear my voice anymore. My mother dropped the phone. I heard the next words from where I sat frozen on the bed. She still has your husband's hands. Then the line went dead. Deputy Sloan did not laugh when we told her. Neither did Carver. Because dispatch had no record of a call reaching the motel room. No incoming line. No trace. Nothing. That was when Sloan shared something she probably was not supposed to. She told us that when officers searched the sealed room beneath the house, they found dozens of old bones. Not full skeletons. Pieces. Fingers. Teeth. Ribs. Vertebrae. Mixed human and animal. Some very old. Some disturbingly recent. And in the dirt near the back wall, they found a space that looked like a nest, or a place where something curled up and listened. The town wanted the house demolished immediately. The county delayed it because of the ongoing investigation. For 3 weeks, House 14 sat under floodlights with officers posted outside. Then one of the officers disappeared during the night shift. His cruiser dash cam caught only one thing of value. At 3:13 a.m., every light inside the house switched on at once. Then, every window on the second floor filled with faces. Not moving, just watching. The footage was too grainy to identify features, but there were too many faces to belong to a single family. The next morning, the officer was gone. His radio was found in the grass. Its last recorded transmission was 11 seconds long, mostly breathing. Then a child's voice saying, "She keeps the ones who listen." County approved demolition that same day. For the first time since we moved in, my mother looked relieved. But Hannah started crying. Not normal crying. Panicked. Desperate. "She will leave if you break it," she kept saying. "She will not die. She will leave." Mom grabbed her shoulders. "Who will leave?" Hannah looked straight at her. "Marrow." Then she turned to me. "And she knows our new smell now." The demolition crew arrived at sunrise 2 days later. Neighbors gathered at the edge of the street, pretending they were there out of concern, not curiosity. Mrs. Delaney stood farthest back, clutching her gardening gloves in both hands. When she saw us, she called my mother over. I went too. The old woman's eyes were wet. "I should have told you before you moved in," she said. "Told us what?" Mom asked. Mrs. Delaney looked at the house, then spoke without taking her eyes off it. When I was 9, my cousin Lily lived there. She went missing in that house in 1968. Everyone said she ran away. Her voice trembled. But 2 nights before she vanished, she told me there was a little girl living under her bed who liked to borrow voices. My mother did not say anything. Neither did I. The bulldozer started with the garage. Wood splintered. Shingles collapsed. Dust rose into the morning air. Nothing happened.